rampant.
My Italian hugging instinct. I love that.
I'm just overcompensating by making lasagna.
Instead, it's never coming back, but I don't believe that.
I think it is. I think we're gonna survive. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that desire for, you know, hugging is so important. You know.
Which is why my grandson's like, Grandma, because I like kiss him like 15 times a day. I'm like, come here, I run after him. He's like, no.
Does anybody else hear feedback?
A little bit, Jeremy. Yeah.
It sounds like clicking, not.
Yeah, I can hear you. You got some feedback.
Yep. So once
do you have any other sound stuff going on in the back, the radio, or TV, or anything?
Nothing.
Anybody else having a lot of static?
I'm only hearing on Jeremy's.
Sounds like a motorboat from here.
Yeah. But somebody else talk, and then I'll see if it's just.
I'm not.
Do you have headphones, Jeremy?
No headphones.
No, I was gonna say that might work better, but well.
if I knew that it was coming from my computer, I would certainly switch to headphones.
I think it is because everybody else doesn't. I only have it when you talk.
I'm going
to
mute
that personally.
I'm going to mute my mic and tell me if it stops.
Stopped. Yeah.
Okay.
Stop.
You are correct, Jeremy. That's the best way to do it, is just briefly mute, and then when there's a pause, and something like that.
But sometimes, Jeremy, if you log off and just come back into the meeting, it tends to get rid of whatever.
I just unmuted my mic and the noise didn't resume.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. You're back.
So if it happens again,
I'll behind you, Jeremy?
That's his wife. That's Marcia.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Marcia. Because I'm nosy, so I had to know.
JoJo's like our social director on this.
Yes.
It's so true.
Hey, somebody's got to do it.
First director of this ship. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think that if anybody else shows up, we'll let them on in. Welcome so very much to our Thursday book launch. I actually, Connie was one of the first people that I approached and said, hey, I heard you have a new book out. Will you read? And she graciously said yes. This was when I was first starting out, and I had technical difficulties with the recording. And I also did that with mine as well when I was first starting, but I've gotten much better, we're hoping, and it just gave me an excuse to have her back, because to know Connie is to love Connie. I already deeply admired her work, and now I can say that she's a dear friend, and obviously I'm not alone in that sentiment, because this room is full of people that look at Connie and say, we love you. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I do want to remind you that this is an open mic, and so if you'd like to read, we'd love to hear you. Connie's going to read, and then we'll have questions and answers. Feel free to write down anything that occurs to you while she's reading. Like if you have a question and you don't want to lose it, you can put it in the chat section. We all will mute while she's reading, and Connie, of course, I'll make you the spotlight video. And if you don't already have Prime Meridian, I'm certain after this reading you're going to want to get it. You can go to her website, and you can also reach out to her to get an autographed copy, which is what I recommend, because she writes sweet stuff. And I actually got several copies to send. Well, one to my eldest daughter, and she was graciously put notes in there too that were inspiring. So Connie, thank you so much for coming back. The little recording sign looks like it's doing correctly, so
we're good.
I'm turning it over to
All right. First, I just want to say I'm so elated to see so many of you here, but I love new faces, familiar faces. I mean, I really, truly just love so many of you, and I'm really, really, really moved. Before I forget, though, because I tend to forget towards the end of the reading, we're having a little bit of a pandemic delay if you order my books through the publisher, but I put my email up at the top. Just email me or message me for a copy, and I've got this whole system going with the mail, and it will just go much faster, especially because you get a signed copy. But for those of you that I think everybody's seen it, but this is my new book. But what's new is that this is my new book with my little gold seal, because it was a finalist in this award called the American Fiction Awards. So it's basically show and tell for poets, because what poet doesn't want a gold seal at the front of their book? So this book, as many of you may know that have read through it, talks about difficult truths, and I feel like if there was ever a time to have a discussion or a reading about those, the time is now. But before I forget also, Malika, I don't know that I've become so close with somebody in such a short period, but we started talking after my May 27th reading. It's just been like sisters that like re-met after like, you know, being apart their whole lives is pretty amazing. So we need human connection. So I'll be reading from Prime Meridian today. And the theme of the book draws a lot off the parallels between the damage to the earth, which I think we're all experiencing the outcomes of right now, and the damage to ourselves when we survive trauma. And there's a large parallel there as far as the pairing the poems in the book. So I'm gonna try to mix it up a little bit for those of you that kind of heard a lot of it in the beginning, but then a lot of you are new. So let me see what time it is so I remember when to stop. Okay. 4 miles from the center of town, you will find the body at the far side of the field, past the sagging rocks, beyond the milk thistle weeds and the crippled crows. You will need a dog who only responds to sign language. You will need to search only in fall when the dusk smothers the trees. You will need a rope so you can tie yourself to a large boulder when the soil caves in. You would need a small camera so you can remember yourself standing there in the smoldering light. You will find the sallow, bent body, the smaller self, you, the barely 13-year-old girl lying lifeless, pretending no one will find her, learning to live in the shallow grave of silence. I wanted to do this next poem entitled Fade In because I didn't know at the time, I wrote this years ago, that there would be such a large conversation around mass. And there's such a symbolism in mass and how we either hide or don't hide, but fade in. In a room far off the main hallway, in front of the mirror, each actor places a painted mask over their face. They have spent years with oil-based stains leaking down the back of their necks. Each papier-mâché curve was molded by the hands of a sinner, painted by the prophecy of deep red. They know how to breathe inside the mask, how to measure the air of atonement. They know their voices sound muffled when the audience leans forward and pretends to understand the rehearsed lines. They understand that death is an understudy. They think that each time they enter and exit my dreams that I won't recognize them. But I stand off stage, unseen, not breathing, watching how they sneak into these perverse scripts. The man who does the lighting, always paralyzed, following the skirted line of velvet robes, each curtain a silence. I kind of like, I think we're learning, thank you, to like recognize people's smile in their eyes more than their other face, because we can't see it most of the time when we go out. In the talking about the conversation about what happens to our bodies when we're traumatized, there's also a conversation about silence. And this poem's about that. Infatuation. I am in love with silence, the way it can fracture a room, how it moves across the stairway through you as if you wore the wrong dress. I step inside the false quiet as if it is a kept woman, as if it understands the agreements of entrance and exit. I hold its hand only when convenient, only behind the champagne table when no one else is looking. I act as if the wooden beams of the ceiling are not falling. I pretend this room was not built on a fault line. I pretend the plates of language have not slipped like a loose jawbone, and I am not standing here bracing myself in a doorway already collapsing. So I'm going to open some of the deeper parts of the manuscript about this time. The poem entitled Forgotten War, I'm reading, is probably one of the harder ones for me to read. And as many of you may know, the Forgotten War was the name associated to the Korean War, which my father was in. Forgotten War. You stumbled around the house through most of the 1970s, sometimes muttering things about young Korean girls I didn't understand. You took long fishing trips to the dark water and wouldn't return until there was no breath left in that lake. I asked Mom about it once. I knew you had been in a war, but didn't understand it had anything to do with your off-center gait, the rage you held in your right shoulder, the passing out at 7 p.m. on the couch. One day, I went to get a popsicle in the garage refrigerator, You were standing there, one hand as always on the Pabst blue ribbon, and I asked, did you ever kill anyone in the war? You went silent, looked away, but I knew already. I knew it in the way you laid the hooked fish on the counter, the way you cut one long line down each body, severing their forgiven skins. Taking the eyes out, saying they were a delicacy in other countries. You seeing in me how relieved I was they could not see you anymore. I knew the lake would somehow disavow the fish as I have you. But at times when I drive past a murky lake, I still see us stumbling over the soul-soaked fields of our forgotten war. I'll read this next one. Let the shuffling begin. Gardening. After my father would beat one of us, he would place flowers on the kitchen table the next morning. He cut the stems flush and laid the begonias in a circle in an inch of water. The lavender and fuchsia permeated the morning. We were called to breakfast, we ate waffles and said nothing of the raging blooms. The apologies buried in the ordered way the flowers were arranged. We looked down at our plates, eating, gorging, ignoring his sun-scorched hands. These days, I spend time pulling petals out of my body, placing a shovel in the open earth, placing flowers back into the ground. This one is kind of about questioning the roads that you took after escaping the trauma, even sometimes years later. As Malika understands, and we've talked about a lot, trauma has a way of having a different conversation with your brain. So this one's called Coastal College Town. And I wrote this like 30 years after I left. I went to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. I leave the hotel room early, looking for a small cafe. My husband still in bed, the sheets half off. I merge onto the same freeway of 30 years ago, the same one who took me away from home. I'm wondering again if I got everything from the garage, the sheets from the closet, the letters you stole from me, pictures of myself in grade school. I knew then that I would never return, and you knew it too. The fog breaks. I find a place where the locals go, and on my way out, throw a dollar bill in the tip jar. On the way back to the hotel, I find a hidden easement between the small beach cottages. I find a few narrow steps, each slightly covered with sand, each a geology of gravel and salient sorrow. I think I did get everything. I think mostly about the sorcery of the word whore, your low voice and moist in the back of my ear, how every day, decades later, I am thankful for small easements, how the fog suddenly lifts from an old road. I love the beach. It takes me away from all that. So in the society, especially in the last several years with our horrifying leader, we talk a lot about sexual assault and how men view women sometimes and treat women. And so this poem called It's No Secret is a testament against misogyny. It's no secret. I understand you know how to lean into a woman, how to search inside her half-naked eyes for affirmation. You think the length of your stare across a room is all a goddess needs to hear thunder. You have pressed your tongue beyond the roof of her mouth until she feels you as fluid on her brain. I hear you have held the lower backs of whores and women with floral skirts, each a rosary bead you have preyed upon. When she kneels before you, are you merciful with her open mouth? Do you understand the penance of an open jaw? Do you remember the color of her hair, how swallowing you may merely be a proclivity for stretching her tired neck? When the dress falls to the floor, do you notice the cloth scattered and imperfect? Do you notice her hands, the delicate fingers, the bone structure, how they are searching for a confession? I'm going to infuse a non-Prime Meridian one because I just feel like we're all living through such a hard time, and I wanted to read one recent one that I wrote about the pandemic. aptly titled Guidelines in a Pandemic. Don't touch anything, not the doorknob, nor elevator button, or the jagged space between your cleaved lungs. Wear a mask to protect others. Wear a mask to hide your cyanotic self, the blue of your lips, the exact hue of the ocean we've smothered. Don't let the dead whale's carcass float too close to your bed. The small bits of plastic inside the remains will remind you of dying with plastic in your body, as if they were trying to tell their own story, and the body bags washing up to shore were not our own. I found it very compelling that people who are getting coronavirus are often dying on ventilators with this plastic apparatus in their mouth, and then whales, we've sent all this pollution, and then whales are dying with plastic in their body, and I just found that incredibly relevant. Next poem I'm going to read is about Nadia Komanichi, who was one of my favorite gymnasts, probably my favorite gymnast growing up. So years later, I was watching the gymnastics with Simone Biles and all the heavyweights, and I went back to start to watch Nadia Komanichi. So this poem is born of that. 1976 YouTube of Nadia Komanichi. I watched the video over and over, fixate on her thin frame, her small poised hands. She was 14, I was 14. Her body takes flight above the uneven parallel bars, the first perfect 10 score. I sat on the hardwood floor, my legs crossed, pretzel-like, breakable. In 1976, I too was practicing floor exercise and found ways to unfold my body. I learned how to hold myself in specific postures, found ways to fall gracefully. Often I wondered about Romania. I wondered about small rooms and the way she looked at herself in the mirror late at night. I watched Nadia. I watched her. I prayed for her safe landing. I kneeled in front of the television set and ignored the smell of booze and the particular way it crept under my door at night. I wonder if she looks back, does she ponder how she escaped, how a young woman will cross a border decades later knowing she can never return. I'm pairing that to my leaving home one about the coast. And then the next one's deboning a fish. I wonder what the fish saw in my father before he gutted them. Were they relieved to know they'd soon be out of misery, relieved to stop the gasping for air, to cease the futile flailing around the countertop? Did they wait within themselves to pray for the long knife? Did they remember the lake, its muddy bottom, knowing they can never return? You can tell me, and I already know, that fish don't understand these kinds of things, but neither does a small child. At some point, don't we all beg for mercy? See what we got next on the... When I was in grade school, my father used to say, I can snap your arm like a twig. I went outside every day, spending more time with the trees, learned the language of the bark while unfolding myself under the shade. I went on long walks, collected broken branches and garbage from the roadside. I tripped over the tree roots sticking out like bone from beneath the earth's skin. As the years went by, I built a hidden tree house. There are no doors, just quiet places to enter and exit. Pardon the shuffle. You know how those changes of plans are. So I have a lot of poems about birds. I seem to project a lot of my issues onto how they fly, how they escape, how they have a flock, how they don't have a flock, how they die alone. Obviously, I think we project a lot of our own experiences onto different things, but mine seems to be a lot of issues with birds and fish. So this one's called How to Watch a Bird Die. And I had this beautiful golden retriever named Hank, which many of you might remember. And whenever I would walk near this bird who I thought was dying, he had this whole reaction. How to watch a bird die. Take the dog out early in the morning. Notice the same eucalyptus, how the crow is still perched, half frozen, at the same midpoint of the tree. Notice how the claws are stuck and how the back of your neck seems damp and full of sunlight all at once. Each day, tell yourself it will be over soon. Tell yourself that's just the way nature works. Tell yourself it's intrusive to do anything else. Urge the dog to walk closer to you instead of pulling you back to the tree over and over. Remind yourself you have to get back and make breakfast. Imagine how peaceful a bird looks when it is finally melting into the dirt. Imagine the ground is atonement and the murder of crows just taking flight are finally free of sin. A couple more. Who remembers, those of you that are kind of over the over 50 crowd, when you had to defrost the freezer, what a pain in the ass that was. Remember, you had to chunk it out with a big, yeah. So when they had frostless freezers, remember that was like a huge thing. Yep. So this is about growing up watching my mom do that. The day breaks off in uneven chunks. All day I think about my mother standing in the kitchen in the silence of January, chipping away, defrosting the freezer, avoiding the Freon tubes, rushing, cursing, crushing, so the food wouldn't go to waste. My sisters hid in their rooms, but I stood next to her, watching water droplets form on bags of frozen vegetables while on the counter. I stared at the package of frozen lamb, the ribs poking out, almost ethereal. In my mind, I reassembled the body of the lamb before they pulled the wool away. My mother scolded me as she worked, do something useful. When it was over, I put all the food back in the freezer, carefully, swiftly, while she cleaned the knife. I put the vegetables far to one side, the meat to the other. I pushed the bones back into place, the lamb's, then mine. Thank you. I think we've got a few more minutes. I'm not a big traveler for a variety of reasons, but one of it is because I have some medical stuff, but I always kind of like to imagine that I could go all these places, and hopefully as a poet our minds can kind of go anywhere, but this one's entitled Living Abroad. I want to move to a country where everyone speaks another language. Each person a different dialect, each neighborhood an unfamiliar terrain. I want to live in a back house where the gardener understands why I will not water the flowers. I want to live at the end of a dirt road where the path has blended into the field. I want to listen only to the stories of the coyotes who cry out to me in the linguistics of forgotten tongues. I do not want to remember how love falls away and blends into the side alleys of an abandoned city. I don't want to know that you live halfway across town, broken in your Alzheimer's, broken from the decades we have not spoken. I will close the heavy door tonight, set out on my own. I will wander like a displaced foreigner, looking for a frail, older woman who resembles you, who cannot speak my name. Okay, I'm going to close with my kind of one of my favorites, which is the Almond poem about my complicated relationship with the black squirrel in the backyard. Some of you might know this, but still, I feel like I like to leave at least some of it at as a redemptive end. So, and quite frankly, I actually really miss the squirrel now. Omen. For 3 years, the black squirrel visits our backyard. I say I hate it. It doesn't look right. I read in science magazines that it's a mutation, a normal occurrence in nature. But every day I think it is a bad omen. Every day I encourage the dogs to run after him. I watch his whirling, curling ascent up the tree. I find relief as he moves away from me into the next yard. Winter passes through me. A close friend my age dies of a brain tumor. I do not wear black to the funeral. Later that week, I step outside in mid-afternoon and see the black squirrel sitting quietly by our pond. Our eyes meet, and for that split second, I see how I have banished the secret body within the body. I see his small heart pulsing, how sorrow fills a cavern and keeps beating. Thank you. Thank you.
If y'all want to unmute, go ahead and do so, and that way you can clap, because I know everybody feels like I do. Thank you so much, Tom.
Holy cow.
Thank you, guys. Thank
Uh,
you.
I could listen to you read all day.
Buddy.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you, everybody. You can unhighlight me if you want to. Are you gonna still spotlight me?
Yep, and y'all, if y'all want to, if you go to gallery view, you get to see everybody, and that's really, you know, I like doing that as well.
I like gallery view, yeah.
Yeah.
Here we are, good.
I know. Okay, so Rachel wrote beautiful work and reading, clapping, bravo, Connie. There was a lot of different phrases that people pulled out, and I love giving the chat section to poets.
Yeah, I
because
love that
obviously
part.
can't read it while it's happening, but
It's always kind of weird now that I'm noticing, because like, so when you do a live reading, there's an interaction that goes on with you in the audience. You can tell if they're attentive or they're lost or looking at their keys, but you don't really know. And then you know, you can't see people really because you're concentrating on your reading. So there is a little bit of a different dynamic to it. So,
yeah, there's a different energetics.
Yeah,
because
totally.
you know, you're not in person, but and you can't see us while you're reading. So,
Right.
but a lot of people were writing, you know, Shallow Grave of Silence clearly resonated because 3 people wrote it at once, which is you know, striking. That 3 people, that line just, and it might have been a 4th one. The plates of language, forgotten war, so powerful, raging blooms, gardening and the work of healing, placing flowers back into the ground.
Oh.
These are the things that, you know, were really
I'm reading them.
fascinating.
Oh, these are great. Thank you. That's why I do love the chat bar, because like later you could need to read the comments.
And so I'm double checking that there's no questions in there, but a lot of it's just us, you know, wowing out on your words, your turn of a phrase. I think that's, and then it's no secret. I mean, come on, no, we could have quoted every single line on that one and been like, holy hell. And then I noticed, Christy, I've known you for how long? And I've never seen you cuss. And next to one thing, you just wrote, damn.
I don't even know how to write anything. I'm so new to Zooming that I don't even know what I'm doing other than really listening and being moved by such powerful work. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
and you're doing good on your first Zoom.
well, this is number 3, so that shows
Okay.
how
getting there.
technologically advanced that I am.
I've done so
Right.
many at this point, but at first it's really kind of just really disorienting. Yeah.
It is, and I didn't know I could write anything. I mean, you know.
Oh,
so-
in the chat bar, yeah, there's always, I kind of learn something new every time. Yeah.
Well, I'm on an iPad, so my little iPad, so I would have to go like, I don't know what I would do to make a comment because I don't have a keyboard in front of me, but I'm getting a camera from does somebody else have that too? Anybody
I'm
else?
sure there might be some other people on their phones or iPads. So
I think
Kathy,
you could probably bring up a keyboard if you touch this. I wouldn't know exactly how to do it.
I think
It
if
might
you,
screw things up, but I'm getting a webcam for my desktop because I do most of my writing on my desktop. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. I do a lot of my writing on my desktop too, Kathy.
But so somebody had a question. Prime Meridian is the name of the book. Thank you for answering that, Phyllis, because I saw Susanna was reminding us to re-mention the name of the book. Thanks, Susanna.
Yeah, thank you.
And then
Right.
there is a question that JJ had, you know, and how long did it take you to transform your pain into poetry is the question.
Oh God, several decades. It kind of depends on, sometimes there's kind of a short turnaround, but now that I see these poems, which have kind of been a buildup over many years, it took me probably till my 30s, but the ones in my 30s and early 40s were really, it was just like too raw, too close to it. I just feel like there's a time that it needs to kind of settle and congeal, kind of the way a tree, you know, you put in the backyard, it takes time to just kind of see it in a different way. Sometimes I think we have to get distance from it. So, but I do find writing the poems both very healing, but sometimes a little scary because there's still a lot of taboos that people who tell the truth have to live with. And it's scary for me, but I do it anyway. Yeah.
And I think that's really something that comes across as that courage. To me, one of the things that I love about your work is you have an embodiment. So there's this deep awareness of like feeling grounded in a body, which is interesting. And then I was noticing there's like in the language itself, it's so rich. And so even when you're talking about very difficult things, I feel like you're grounding the reader in embodiment, in certain images, in repetition of sounds or in words. And that's a really, like, I think a skillful and challenging thing to do with what is very difficult topics.
Well, that's really well said too. And it's really hard because, as Malika knows, I spent a lot of time not feeling anything. I was completely numb. That's how you survive. So when I started to finally feel pain in my 30s, it came on like a freight train. And then you're kind of like, wait a minute, I want to go back to being numb. Where's the switch? And it doesn't always work that way. But there is, I do think we hold trauma in the body. And we live in a society that's a very quick fix, take the pill, do the yoga, it's better. But I finding a way just to hold hands with it. I mean, it doesn't mean I really like it, but if we have to find ways to understand how it finds itself in our body. Because I think that people who have a history of either profound grief or trauma, that you hold it in your body, whether you know it or not.
Even talks about the pain in the right shoulder. Like there was the trauma.
My dad with that shoulder, he used to drop his shoulder when he was drunk and kind of do this thing, and I didn't. And there's a lot of things that you're put together and go, oh, that makes more sense now. Because parents who abuse, they came from their own wounding as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you have a question? Somebody looked like they raised.
Tammy did, but I couldn't hear.
Hi, I'm Tammy. Hi,
Tammy.
Hi. I've been friends with Connie for a few years.
Yeah.
And we know each other just from like, the poetry community and Facebook, but this is really, it's such a fine moment for you to have this collection out.
Thank you, Tammy.
We randomly connected today and she had this reading and I was like,
I saw you on Facebook and I was like, I haven't talked to Tammy in a long time.
I know, I was like, I'll come right now.
No, I was like, I have a reading tonight. Do you want to come?
Yeah, I wanted to say like, just the way, just generally the way that you confront, memories and behaviors of your father, like there's really a wisdom in your presentation and perspective now, because you're really trying, there's many of these poems that are trying to understand, and there is a maturity and an adult perspective of the, speaker in these poems who is trying to make sense of this as a grown woman.
Right.
And it's so difficult when the trauma comes from the father or a toxic male presence in our home. And we come through that because it takes so much unlearning to let go of that. And who am I under all of that, their stuff?
All the messages and the taboos and the talks and the self-conversation and the, like a lot of stuff you're like not aware of, like you have something happen at the store or somebody like kind of talked to you wrong and you feel kind of traumatized, you kind of can't breathe. And then, as it starts to come out, you realize it's a lot of layers to undo. But I appreciate you saying that, Tammy.
I thought you did that really well, and just, it wasn't just the raw catharsis of the pain, but like a really wise perspective comes through. So
I try to see it from there's the view here when you're growing up, but then there's like this wider view, kind of from a higher place, to see that. I mean, I truly believe that abuse begets abuse, and until somebody decides to heal that abuse stage, it's the pass it back or pass it forward. And until you pass it back and make a conscious decision to not pass it forward, I'm not going to do this. It's very unconscious and people pass it on without knowing it. I mean, that's why boys who watch their mother get beaten are the most common group of people who tend to beat their wives. There's so much that goes on. I always have this fantasy, if we wiped away all abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse of children, how much less anger we would have as a society, how much less anger we would have acting it out on each other, hitting, shooting, all this pain, because I think that what we do to children and justify it is It's just
And we
inexcusable.
see that very early on, you know, the failure to have trauma-informed care in the schools and to understand oftentimes behavior is communication, but it's beyond their skills to say what has happened and hurt people.
Well, and they act it out too. You know, they and the other thing is that I think that, well, I know some of you might know there's this thing called the ACEs score that's tied to how much trauma you have as a kid, and there's this high correlation to how much physical problems you have later. And there's a very high correlation. It's like an actual medical, it's not like just a theory. There's a Nadine Burke, I think is her name, and she was this doctor that started to see this in these communities. So she's this A score of like 8 or 9 things that you check the box, which I think I checked all of them, but, and then there's these, because it's a way to help preventative. Like if somebody had all this, they're going to have maybe more of these problems. And we need, as a, you know, because look at the cost on the medical community alone.
I think it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, the ACE score.
Yeah, yes.
And I did want to go back to a few other questions. William said he had to leave. He said, wonderful reading Connie's poems, going right to the core and carrying the listeners with their organic music and powerful touch, whether delicate or running deep. So he's actually at work, and he said, thank you, I'll be in touch.
He's great.
But
Yeah.
John had a question about, have you worked with survivors of trauma?
Actually, yes. And I consider myself kind of like, now I have the Maya Angelou philosophy that when you're in the kind of crisis stage, but there's only so much that you can, at some point you got to, you know, not wear a catcher's mitt, you got to throw something back. So now that I'm in what I consider the more advanced stages of healing, I consider a personal responsibility for people who are struggling. And there's pretty much nothing they can say to me that I can't hear, because I've been through it all. And people need to know that they can say the darkest shit, which, pardon my French, but yeah. So yes, people generally know because I'm so truthful about my history. And some people come to me privately and say, I've never talked about this, or my family's ostracized me, or whatever all the various outcomes are. So yes, I really feel like it's super important. I don't want to just be defined by my own suffering. I want to help other people know that there's a way out of the darkness.
And I would say that by bravely, you know, reading your work, people do come to you for, you know, for that reason.
Or even if it's dark, we need to hold hands in the dark. I'm not saying there's this kind of this whole thing we have in society, you know, feeling recovery, you're done. I don't really feel like we're ever done. I think we always need to self-examine. But I think even if we're in darkness together, we can hold hands. We just need to be there for each other.
And then the other question was, can you speak to some of the poets or what has influenced you?
Yeah.
As a writer.
My probably 3 big ones are, the biggest is Naomi Shihab Nye, who I love and adore, and I just eat her books whole. And Sharon Olds and Louise Glick are my 3 top favorite women poets. And I loved Tony Hoagland. Will always love his poems a lot. And so he has this beautiful poem that I'll never forget this line to, just to mention it, that he struggled with this relationship with his mother. And it's about when she's deteriorating and he's giving her a bath, and the change of the power differential happens as it does when sometimes parents get older. And you could tell it was a complicated relationships. And he goes, and he was talking about feeding her, and this line says, to raise the spoon to your old enemy. I just, that line, it's called Lucky. If you want to look it up, just Tony Hoagland, Lucky. It's one of the most amazing poems I've ever read. Yeah, those are my, I mean, I read a lot of poems, but those are my top influencers.
Thank you.
Well, can I just say, I would just like to tell you, Connie, how much I appreciate your compassion and empathy in our interactions as we know each other as poets over the years. And your beautiful spirit really comes out in your work. And it's so wonderful to hear you actually read your own poetry and to see your face moving.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I just know you've been through so much, and I'm so glad. And we've kind of been also connecting here and there for years. So I really appreciate you too, Terry.
Yeah, thanks.
Yay, that's awesome. There was one more question. Are either of your parents still alive, and are they aware of your book?
Well, they're not alive, so that answers question number 2. No, they're not. I mean, they were lived into their 80s. It was very complicated. There was not a relationship there at the end. And I'll let you do the math backwards on why, but no, there wasn't. I had to keep myself safe. So, yeah.
Well, thank you once again, Connie, so very much for coming back a second time.
It was my pleasure, because me and like it's today. We get to see each other.
I know, I was so excited.
Like we can't call each other some other time. I know.
And I was telling her, you know, she said, I'm coming tonight. I said, great. She said, I love Connie. I said, so do I.
This is
All
like
right.
so neat for me because I feel like I know it's really hard, but the Zoom thing has really sustained me in a huge way. First, I was very, you know, how can you really connect with people through a screen and, you know, all the usual reticence, but I've actually had such an amazing time, and I've met Karen, I recognized from a bunch of readings, and I've just had such a great time. And now I feel like I get to virtually travel throughout the country and like meet Terry for the first time, and Tammy, all these people I wouldn't get to meet. So I'm actually loving the Zoom thing now. So I was very happy to come back with my homie, Malika.
I have a deep gratitude towards this platform because
Yeah.
I do feel like the Thursdays have been very sustaining.
Yeah, and you know what, Malika, would you cultivate this very close, supportive experience? I mean, the host is the one who kind of sets the tone for the whole thing, and you really make it really open and loving, and people want to come back.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. But it truly is like been the touchstone of my week. So I'm definitely like, hi guys.
I'm so happy. I know.
On my farm, I haven't spoken to people, well, things that speak back in a while.
I was going to say you've spoken to horses and turkeys, but yeah.
Yes. All right. So I only had 2 people that signed up for open mic. Jojo and Phyllis, and if you would like to, and also if you have a question for Connie, go ahead and jump right in, because I don't want to hold you back and feel like you got to go through chat. Okay, Phyllis, I got you down. Yes.
Kind of a general question. So how do you all know each other? So where are you located? This is my first time here. So because I came because of Connie, yeah. So where are you in the country? You're in the East Coast somewhere?
Yeah, so Phyllis, I'm actually in Aden, North Carolina.
All right.
And a lot of people came just for Connie because we love her. But Karen is another North Carolina. Terry is, and so is Christy, and so is John. And Laura used to be that she was stuck in, and now you're in DC. So, but then there's also people that are here just for today, like Tammy. I've never met her. I'm glad she's here, though. I loved your input. And Kathy, that was a first.
That's right. Kathy's my buddy from Marin County, and she's only
yeah.
about an hour
And
away.
then Bill and Jeremy were new to me.
California here.
Chicago.
35 miles northeast of San Francisco.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome. So, very good question, Phyllis. It's Kismet that brings us together.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
You know, and whether we see each other again on another Thursday, you know, who knows? But
I'd love to come back. Yeah.
I would love for you to come
Now,
back.
you know, it's a regular thing. She does this. Is it every week?
Every Thursday.
Every Thursday, yeah.
Yes. Just see.
So I didn't know, let's see, it's through Redheaded Stepchild. That's your book. I mean, the journal, right?
She's the journal she edits, yeah.
Yeah. I think I submitted a long time ago to you guys, but I love what you do. So you've got this going every week now?
Yes, thank you for saying that, Kathy.
Oh.
What happened was I had a book coming out during the pandemic, and it was going to come out, you know, they thought May. So in March, when I realized other people were in the same position, I just started reaching out to a couple of friends. And then because I admired Connie's work, I just sent her an email and didn't realize how welcoming she was to things like that, which I'm so grateful for. But, you know, I was kind of starstruck, and I said, hey, would you read? I know you have a new book out. And she said, yes. And then you know how Connie is. She said, oh, and I know this poet, this poet, this poet.
This poet who has a new book, yeah.
So before I knew it, I was booked up for the next couple of months. And now I'm booked until January for Thursdays.
Wow,
So, you know,
that's fantastic.
I'm grateful, though, because it turns out that a lot of people have new books, and there's such fabulous, stunning poems. I don't think I've ever been more humbled by the community of writers that are across this country.
It's especially hard right now, though, because it's hard to have a book out in a pandemic for all reasons.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
like, it's just given such a great place for,
So
you know, people that have books out. Yeah.
We'll keep it going.
So Malika, can you tell people how they can easily find out every week?
Okay, what I found is the easiest way to do it is if you just look up book launch Redheaded Stepchild in Facebook. That
okay.
Because
book launch Redheaded Stepchild on Facebook, right?
Yeah, that's the way I suggest people do it.
I was
And-
gonna
Or they
say,
can just friend you. Yeah.
Yeah, or you can friend me, and I usually post weekly, and I have the whole agenda for the rest of this year into next year, which is really crazy. And let's see, I wanted to, Terry just wrote, gotta go, but thank you so much. Much love to you,
Yeah, love
Connie.
that.
Powerful work. Hugs.
Also, I have to say, I think I have some sort of a past life in North Carolina. I know more poets from North Carolina of the entire United States.
It's the writing estate, Connie.
It's gotta
We're
be.
the writing estate.
And I don't hardly ever travel. And the only state I ever traveled to was North Carolina in the 90s because I had autism. I have a son with severe autism for an autism conference there. So there's something about North Carolina.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
we love you in North Carolina. You got family.
I know I'll just have to move. I'll move to you in the hurricanes instead of the fires.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't know.
Oh, God.
I still have asthma from the fire. It's terrible.
Yeah, that is terrible because y'all's air quality has
It's
been
in there. Yeah, it's
so
been awful.
hazardous.
But now it's finally better. So
Is it?
yeah,
All
but we're
right.
early on in the season, so it's going to be scary. Yeah.
It is because more lightning strikes, more fires. It's scary.
12,000 lightning strikes in 72 hours. Dry lightning strikes. Unheard of.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to feel overwhelmed, I think. And what you were saying about, the larger message in Prime Meridian of what is done to the planet.
Yeah, Mother Earth is not a happy camper.
No,
No.
it's true. Okay, guys. So if there aren't any more questions, I've got a couple more.
Yeah, I want to hear you guys' poems. So yeah.
Yep. So if we'll start with you, JoJo, and I'll make you the spotlight video. Then I'm going to go to Phyllis, then Karen, then Tammy. And if I've missed you, you'll just have to wave me down. All right. So coming to you, John.
hello. And I just want to say, Connie, you rock, and I love your poems always. And I want to say hello to everyone because I didn't get to because some of y'all came late, and I'm a weirdo, and I like saying hi to everyone. So hi, Karen, Christy, Kathy, Jeremy, Connie, Phyllis, Bill, John, Laura, and was it Tammy?
Tammy, yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. All right, I'm going to read a newer poem, which I'm excited about. I've written one finished kind of newer poem, which I'm going to read, and another one the other day, because I haven't written anything like 2 months. So I'm excited. It hasn't a title yet. The dead do not speak loudly. They bring a breezy voice that lulls, a dream, a want. I resign life, and this shell is turned into an autopilot disaster. Dilapidated, the barren road curves into a frightening weariness as bone-soft limbs tremble in the trumpet of wind. The sun has been unforgiving. The last bit of joy curls, and its round edges bow in prayer. I cannot remember the last time I lived. We searched for clouds, but all we found are dusty storms. The air beats down. The air beats us down. And that's that poem. Oh, thank you.
Karen would say that's how John ends his poems. He says, and that's that poem.
And can I say, even I've been doing YouTubes, and even I've caught myself on the YouTube video with just me even saying, and that's that poem, and it's the only poem I've read. It's turned into my signature move. No.
Well, there you go. I was gonna say you can make it your thing.
Yes.
I'm coming to you, Phyllis. Oh.
Hi.
Oh wait.
Here
Sorry,
I am.
I came to you, Bill. Look, I'm just spotlighting everywhere. There we go.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're perfect.
Okay. Well, Connie, wow, I'm so happy to be here. It was fabulous.
So happy you're here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I have about 5 poems I could read just in response to what you read. So, so I'll just pick this one. This one actually is an older one, and it speaks to the separation from family. So it's called Snow Drifts Through the Living Room. And the epigraph is, you who must leave everything that you cannot control. It begins with your family, but soon it comes round to your soul. That's from Leonard Cohen, Sisters of Mercy. Pack up the scarves, suits, sweaters, the socks, the infinite phenomenon of your possessions. Inside the winter house, you can't control the wind, the rain, the snow. You can't control the way the foundation might slip or the walls could crack, or what you will say when you walk out the door forever. It isn't an easy decision. It's a blizzard. The wind drives you to it. The cold, damp storm of their anger, the grip of their freezing hands begging you to stay. It's ice, the South Pole. You're a penguin leaving the circle of body heat that is the only survival. You can fly through the chagrin, through the violence, rounding the edge of your foundation, far away, free. There you are, seat of feathers and marrow, quintessence of courage, you who are the essence of loneliness, you who gathers, who starts over.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That really hits at that how hard that is to be doing something like that, to step away from a family. Lovely job,
Like
Phyllis.
exile. Yeah, it's very painful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Phyllis. I'm coming to Karen next. Where'd you go, Karen?
Here I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So this is a new one, Reaping in the Time of Corona. She's completed her reading on the hows and winds of harvesting. She's waited for the passing of the hours of scattered showers. She stepped away from the deception of central AC and the clatter of the prattling of news anchors on TV. She stepped out and she stepped in to now, to here, to breathing into, breathing of the offerings of this now, of leaf and limb, as she lifts up the perfect roundness of a single cherry tomato. She lifts up from the celebration of spreading leaves and paler reds and sturdy stalks, and then she stills when the tiniest glint of a flash of neon green startles her eye. A delicate orchard orb weaver balanced on a single silver strand, strung from leaf to stem, to leaf to stalk, to leaf to stem, to the intricate silver white basket of a web spun among the trembling towers of the magistry of the brimming of her deck garden plants. She lowers hand and head and gently grants this new first cherry tomato sovereignty, whispering a prayer of gratitude to the spider, the breeze, the fruits, the gnats, and for them, and to and for the settling in of the coming on of the dusk and the certain rising up of somewhere a moon, and certainly of somewhere some stars.
Hey, lovely. There was a lovely musicality to that, Karen. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
It was lovely. Tammy, I'm gonna come to you next. I always love this, but it always takes me a minute to find people. So there we go. I found Tammy. So you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I've been working on a series of poems about the 50s pinup queen Betty Page. And everyone knows her for her notoriety as a sex symbol, and she actually did some fetishist poses and work. However, she did drop out of the public eye in the late 50s. And during that time, she went through a lot of difficulties with mental illness and suffered from schizophrenia, and was in fact arrested for some problems in her relationships and marriage. So I'm just kind of looking at that, twist and that aging piece of who she was. So this poem's called Betty Page Donates Her Bikinis to Goodwill. You won't be seeing so much of me, perhaps a postcard. My greatest pose today is to live out of print. I'm giving up the business, the recreation of myself, its own bustier, the heavy dark bangs and red lips, a smiling facsimile. Golly, I used to be fun, I'll admit. Sequins, lace-stitched ruffle bottoms, and the rubber whips. I've had my share of this world on a leash, the exchange of husbandries, all the men I have ever loved, now lampshade shadows draped in scarves. They still come and go as they please. I see them now in veiled wisps and the keyhole peeps.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. And that's, I can see that could be a rich topic to have like persona poems in her voice on quite a lot of different things.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think I've seen a biography. I mean, I'm sure it's out there, but something about the, the later years.
Yeah, there is material. She's got such a following for sure.
Yes, definitely. But it's the still in the moment, not the after, how a life goes on after being, photographed so much and being in movies and stuff like that. So thank you for that, Tammy. Somebody said lampshade shadows draped in stars. Really enjoyed that. Okay. John said Gretchen Mol played her in a biopic. So I guess that's awesome. See, this is why it's so good to have a multitude of people, because people have more information and I can just throw it out there and somebody will come up with an answer. Did anyone else want to read for open mic? And if not, then if you want to unmute. Yes, Jeremy, you want to jump on in?
Sure, I'll do one.
Yay, come on.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're good.
I wrote this after listening to too many otherwise intelligent talking heads on TV saying stupid things. This is called Thermodynamic Considerations. Inside an engine, hot gas molecules, whether steam or burning fuel, move at random. It's the engine's design. It's the structure surrounding that gas that makes the myriad randomly moving hot gas molecules push on a piston, rotate a crankshaft, do someone's work. When you think you see chaos, whose work's being done? Can you name the machine?
Oh, I love that. Thank you. I'm glad you read.
Thank you.
That is awesome. See, this is why it's so much fun to have an open mic, because it's kind of like how I like to eat too. I like sampler plates. It's really true. That's awesome. So we are at that time, and as sad as I am to say goodbye, I know everybody has stuff to do, and I want to thank you once again, Connie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all. It was just such a delight. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you.
I miss you. I miss all of you.
Pour my heart out again.
Love you, Connie.
Oh, it was just such a joyful thing to see all of you. So thank you. Malika, you're loved by many.
Oh,
Yeah,
I am
it's
lucky.
great.
The reason it's successful is because of you. The reason this series is. So,
Thank you, guys. Be well.
All right. Until the next time.
Successfully.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Well.
Thank you.